guests, a very good evening to you. This is Tina Joy welcoming you all to the Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industries 188th Foundation Day. Warren Buffett had once said, "Someone is sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago." 188 years ago, the Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry was founded by 7 Britishers and 3 Parsis to encourage, quote unquote, a friendly feeling and unanimity among commercial men on all subjects involving the common good, to promote and protect the general mercantile interests of this Bombay presidency, to collect and classify information on all matters of general mercantile interest, to obtain the removal of all acknowledged grievances. Today, as we celebrate our 188th Foundation Day, it gives us a sense of pride to be a part of this illustrious legacy. To start today's proceedings, I would like to invite on the dais Mr. Ritesh Tiwari, President, Bombay Chamber, and CFO for HUL and Unilever South Asia, and Independent Director, ONDC Board, to present his welcome address.
Stina, thank you very much. Chief guest, Rohit Jawa, President, Unilever South Asia, and CEO and Managing Director, HUL, and my boss. Thank you, Rohit, for making it today. Past President, Board of Members, and members of Bombay Chambers, and ladies and gentlemen, very, very, very warm welcome and a good evening to all of you. It is an honor to be here today to welcome each of you to the 188th Foundation Day of Bombay Chamber. The Chamber formally came into existence on 22nd September 1836. Today, with the Foundation Day, we commemorate the spirit of John Skinner, the first chairman which made a 10-member committee and started this whole mission. We also celebrate the contributions of all the successive eminent presidents who led the Chamber's activity and added to its prestige as an important trade and commerce institution. I had the virtue and benefit of having Anjali and Nilesh Bhai as my predecessors, and a huge amount of learnings for both of you. Bombay Chamber has a rich history. Widely regarded as the oldest commerce chambers, Bombay Chamber has been an integral part of many standout moments that we have in the country. To name a few, it had a role to play in the first railway which was built in for Bombay and Thane. The relentless advocacy for the postal system led to passing off of the Indian Postage Act of 1854. The standardization of weights and measures in 1932 and the setting up of machinery for arbitration for commercial disputes in 1880, and we know that is so much mission critical to have so that we can, at least to some extent, liberate rigor from the courts in the country. Now, as I reflect, besides these big impacts, I realize what Bombay Chamber has stood for over the ages. Its commitment to unlock value for the business has been unquestionable. It has attempted to leverage its network to create new business opportunities, enabling a win-win outcome. It has acted as a critical bridge between various regulatory authorities and India Inc., enabling efficient and executable policies. It has led the thinking in complex areas constructively, driving research to solution and catalyze change in the country. It has centered itself around issues of common concern rather than fulfilling any personal interest. Most importantly, it has kept pace with time, with each president leading the agenda of the Chamber before then passing on the baton to the next president. The Chamber has ensured a slow evolution of thought by design. This year's mission statement of collaborative development has 4 critical aspects: embracing digitalization, bringing sustainability at the heart of business, fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion, and enhancing ease of doing business. Events and activities over the past year have been designed around this. On embracing digitalization, this year, Bombay Chamber has organized a landmark event, the CFO Technology Conclave. The conclave had it all, from an in-depth educative masterclass on artificial intelligence to interactive panel conversations on the future of finance to unveiling a thought-provoking CFO technology publication featuring 22 CFOs from India Inc. Further, the year has been interspersed by multiple educative webinars on all things digital. The relatively new Digital Personal Data Protection Act was one of the topics that the team deliberated and had a webinar on. Furthering the cause of sustainability, the Chamber had an impressive conclave earlier today in the same room, focusing on sustainability as a way to unlock value and growth rather than that being seen as a cost center. Besides this, the Chamber has had a series of events over the course of the year touching on many different aspects of sustainability. A half-day symposium on circular economy discussing circularity, a Green Future PEVC conclave discussing sustainability financing, and a CSR conclave touching upon the future-fit topics of social stock exchange. On fostering DEI, pursuant to the DEI Awards ceremony, the Chamber has released a coffee table book. It captures the best practice. In fact, this was very interesting. We had multiple entries for the award. Each entry on its own was an outstanding example of what one could do in the organization to create an entire movement for DEI. And we captured all of that into a coffee table book, and I hope many of you have read it. If not, we do have soft and hard copies to have you benefit from. But further, on a more fundamental level, in DEI, the Chamber organized a capacity building program, creating awareness on POSH sensitivity and training members on more various nuances of it. Lastly, to enhance the ease of doing business, the Chamber has worked on a cross-section activities. It has engineered a transformative mediation training program spread over several weeks, teaching the art and science of mediation to participants, a vital skill set to unlock negotiation and business. Secondly, the Chamber has had an active channel for communication with regulatory authorities, advocating taxation and doing simplification in the country. The key elements of that has always been the pre-budget. A lot of effort goes into across various committees to come across what's the kind of advocacy or inputs that we want to give to administration and to government in terms of driving the next budget. We have recently, we're going to now today, in fact, we're going to speak on the same forum, the 6th Economical Outlook Survey of results, and which we'll share in the room today, a brief history of that, and we'll also share that with relevant authorities. Additionally, the Chamber has had multiple training and learning sessions for its member, advising on new taxation regulation and how to practically execute them. Example, the seminar on GST and angel tax. The two-day AgriCorp conference sought strategies to increase the ease of doing business in agriculture, the primary sector in the economy, which all of us know has more than 40% of people employed. We had 350 plus participants and 21,000 visitors. The event was a stellar success. We had many more events and sessions we have planned in Chamber during the year, and we do hope to continue playing a role in development of the country. On that note, and without further ado, I would like to invite Sina back to the stage to take the program forward. But I do want to finish by thanking Sandeep and the outstanding team that we have at Bombay Chamber. Without their support, without their zeal, we would not have made progress on multiple things that we've done. So Sandeep, to you and to entire Bombay Chamber administration team, a big hats off.
Thank you, Mr. Tiwari, for your encouraging words. Before I welcome our chief guest and keynote speaker for today, Mr. Rohit Jawa, on the dais, a brief introduction about him. Mr. Rohit Jawa is the Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of Hindustan Unilever Limited, HUL. He is also the President, Unilever South Asia, and a member of the Unilever Leadership Executive. Mr. Jawa started his career with HUL as a management trainee in 1988. He has a proven track record of sustained business results across India, Southeast Asia, and North Asia. As EVP North Asia and Chairman Unilever China, he helped to transform the business into Unilever's third largest globally. He developed a distinct strategic agenda for China, championed digitalization and premiumization, and steered the business very capably through the COVID crisis. As the chairman of Unilever Philippines, he led the business to become one of the top 10 markets for Unilever globally. He is deeply passionate about integrating the strength of traditional markets with digital technologies and future-fit business models. Mr. Jawa has a bachelor's degree from St. Stephen's College and an MBA from the Faculty of Management Studies, both at the University of Delhi, India. He is an alumnus of IMD Business School, Lausanne, Switzerland, where he completed the Breakthrough Program for Senior Executives in 2018. He also completed the Advanced Management Program from Harvard Business School in 2022. Mr. Jawa served as a founding secretary for the Food Industry Asia Singapore in 2010 and co-chair of the Grow Asia Philippines, along with the Secretary of Agriculture Philippines in 2015-16, a World Economic Forum initiative for inclusive business models in agriculture. In addition, he served on the Consumer Goods Forum China Board, a global CEO-led collaboration for positive change. Since July 2023, he is an executive committee member of Vikasa, a coalition that collaborates to accelerate India's progress on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. He is also a trustee of Breach Candy Hospital, Mumbai. Distinguished guests, please put your hands together for Mr. Rohit Jawa as I invite him on the dais to present his keynote address on India's decade from incredible India to inevitable India.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Thank you, Ritesh, as well, and to Bombay Chambers for this opportunity. I'm delighted to be here. Good evening, and really happy to be here with the Mumbai Inc., the leading personalities of this great city and a great economy. The oldest chamber in the nation, 188 years, it's continuously serving trade and industry throughout its nearly 2 centuries of existence. That's really, really admirable. Bombay Chambers has made significant contribution towards fostering a future-ready business environment in the country over the years. And it's indeed an honor to be a part of this foundation day tonight. So thank you very much for having me here. I've been asked to talk about inevitable India, the future that we've all been talking about. In fact, Niti Aayog recently presented Vision India at 2047, plan to the cabinet that outlines how India can become a USD 30 trillion economy by 2047 and escape the middle income trap to generate per capita of nearly $20,000. This vision for India can indeed be realized. After all, India has oft been called as the fastest growing nation, and according to Goldman Sachs report, it'll have the second largest economy in the world by 2075, beating even the US. India is clearly poised to leapfrog to the future. Now, during my career with Unilever, I've had the opportunity to have a ringside view of growing Asian economies, particularly the tigers, Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, to name a few. These Southeast Asian countries suffered a huge setback in 2008 in the global financial crisis, but backed by government stimulus programs, these economies recovered strongly. The major forces behind this resurrection of the 4 tigers were a robust exports policy, investments in infrastructure, and large reserves of savings and capital that could be plowed back into governance. Traditionally, growth for most nations, including China, have been driven by manufacturing and exports, especially of hard goods. The India growth journey, in my view, is going to be different, unique, and today I want to talk about its distinctive model of growth. I would like to spend some time discussing the uniqueness of India growth journey, the accelerators, and the key focus areas for us to work on in the future. The India model of growth, I believe, is going to be fueled by 5 unique major accelerators. The first and most important driver of growth is the nation's digital landscape. The Digital India story has indeed been a global success in Industry 4.0 and will continue to be the country's source of competitive advantage. Take, for example, the India Stack, a one-of-its-kind digital public infrastructure based on identity, payments, and consent-based data sharing that India has built over the last decade and has transformed the way we do business. This digital infrastructure has opened up possibilities for companies to reach consumers and customers seamlessly with superior tailored services. In the years to come, many applications based on this digital stack, such as ONDC for digital commerce, ULIP for logistics, Ayushman Bharat for electronic health records, amongst others, will spur innovations for new growth. Add to this, with the government's Digital India drive, today's digitization has reached even the grassroots levels in the country. According to Google and Bain report, India will see a whopping 480 million rural internet users by 2025, and the rural user base is likely to act as a force multiplier for the economy. The second unique feature of the India growth story is its favorable demographics. India's 40% population is below the age of 25 years. The Pew Research Center estimates that India's median age is 28 as against 38 of US and 39 of China. In fact, India is predicted to become home to the 1/5 of global workforce, making it the go-to destination for employees from across the world. Further, while the population of other developed countries is aging rapidly, India's population is expected to stay younger for longer, giving it good runway to reap its demographic dividend. The third accelerator is the Make in India drive. The Atmanirbhar Bharat vision, articulated by the Prime Minister, that was boosted by a corresponding fiscal stimulus in the form of special economic package, spelled out India's growth ambition in the manufacturing sector. While this is impeded by the sudden pandemic, manufacturing in India continues to be one of the key focus areas for growth and employment. We have recently witnessed several global players which are familiar with tuning into India as one of the key manufacturing hubs, signaling the potential of the nation to become the world's next manufacturing center. While the growth journey for most economies is fueled by manufacturing, the India story will also be equally impacted by the services industry. According to IBEF, as of 2022, India accounted for 55% of world's functioning GCCs, or global capability centers. The number of GCCs in India has reached nearly 1,600 this year, expected to cross 1,900 by 2025, and can be another vector of employment. According to NASSCOM, GCCs set up by multinationals employ already around 2 million people. The fifth and the very unique driving India growth journey vector is going to be its growing domestic market. We are not stranger to that. While most growing economies traditionally depend on large exports, market India is witnessing a rapid rise in consumption in its 1 billion plus population, which we know very well as HUL, driven by growing affluence, urbanization, and changing family structures with younger decision makers. This presents a huge headroom for growth and opportunity. So many opportunities and vectors for growth. However, like in every journey, there will be areas that need greater focus. Let me call out 5 areas that we believe we need to do more work to make India's growth equation complete. First is about creating employment. According to the data from Center of Monitoring Indian Economy, as of September this year, the overall unemployment rate in India is about 7%. It's an improvement from the past years, but more work needs to be done to ensure that we generate suitable livelihood opportunities for India's rapidly growing workforce. Simply generating employment may not be enough. Only 49% of the youth is employable, points out the India Skills Report. So the second area we need to focus is ensuring that the growing workforce is employable. At the same time, we need to continue to ensure women participation in the workforce. It's often observed that a working woman spends a sizable part of her income towards welfare of the family, on education, health, and hygiene, plus boosting the development index of the nation. In fact, a report by McKinsey Global Institute estimates that just by offering equal opportunities to women, India could add close to $770 billion to its GDP by 2025. The fourth focus area would be strengthening the rural economy. It's often said that India lives in its villages, but as long as rural India doesn't truly live, as a nation, we do not have a chance to be truly on a growth trajectory. A large section of the population will still depend on agriculture as their primary source of income and livelihood, a sector that contributes to about 1/5 of each nation's GDP. This clearly needs to change. Agri-tech and allied sectors such as food processing units can generate non-agri-dependent livelihoods in rural India, especially for women, eventually boosting consumption and creating a virtuous cycle of growth for the country. And finally, and most importantly, we will need to be cognizant of the climate challenge. The environmental crisis looming over us is most definitely the elephant in the room. At the end of the day, we only have one planet. The report predicts that India is amongst the top nations most in danger from the effects of climate change. And according to the RBI, up to 4.5% of the GDP could be at risk by 2030 due to climate change. We have already seen the effects of this climate change with cyclones, droughts, unseasonal rainfall, and severely harmful pollution levels across the cities. Also, India's more than 7,500 kilometers of coastline are at high risk for impact of climate change related to sea level rise. Unlike developed economies that were on a growth journey decades ago, India will be growing in a world with depleting natural resources. As a nation, we'll have to transform the balancing act, balance growth with environmental sustainability, and ensure that this growth is inclusive and no one is left behind. The government has been taking significant steps in this direction. Policy decisions by the government, including banking reforms, production-linked incentives, FDI policy, implementation of GST, for instance, and initiatives such as Skill India and Digital India are helping to provide a fertile ground for the industries to grow. At the same time, the government's Panch Amrit pledge ensures that the growth doesn't harm the environment. In fact, this week's agreement at the COP28 by 195 countries to transition away from fossil fuels in energy systems in a just, orderly, and equitable manner is absolutely the step in the right direction. We in the business in this room need to play an important role. Corporates will need to partner the nation's growth and integrate environmental and societal actions into the very fabric of their business. In fact, the job to be done for India Inc. today, or Mumbai Inc., is to go far beyond business growth. We need to protect the planet and the people, and in our value chain, and also in the communities in which we operate. I'm going to give you a few examples of HUL, or Hindustan Unilever. We are a small player in this massive ecosystem of the country, but we are taking steps to partner the nation because what's good for India is good for HUL. We've always believed that a little step taken in the right direction will add up to a big difference. So in small ways, we're working towards not only partnering India's growth, but ensuring this growth is good for its people and its planet. Let me give you a few examples. We've been working towards enhancing livelihoods of people. We directly employ close to almost 21,000 people and 3 lakh people in our outer core or in our ecosystem. We undertake skilling initiatives not within our, or only within our operations, but also within, we have curated several industry-first practices for the larger corporate ecosystem. We've been generating livelihood opportunities in communities as well. Let me give you an example of Project Shakti. Launched at the dawn of the millennium, so 20-some years ago, with a vision of empowering women in rural areas, this project has been a resounding success. We have started as a small pilot with a handful of women in South India, now consists of 190,000 Shakti Ammas today. Yet another example is Project Prabhat, launched in 2013, so almost a decade back. This comprehensive community development program focused on improving the lives and livelihoods of the people living in and around HUL factories, and has till date positively impacted close to almost 10 million people around where we operate as manufacturing facilities. We also realized early on the importance of creating an inclusive workforce and have also taken significant efforts in this direction. Our perseverance in ensuring a gender-balanced workforce has been recognized. In the last 2 years, we've been ranked amongst the best places to work for women. We have taken our learnings over the years to improve gender balance in our sales teams and in our factories, shop floor as well, and we're fostering an empowering culture that goes beyond gender to include persons with disabilities and talent from the LGBTQIA+ populace. Alongside our people action, we've also been taking actions to remain planet positive. For instance, agriculture provides some of our key raw materials, and we've been doing our bit to protect the nature and boost agriculture productivity. We're committed to source 100% of our key agriculture crop sustainability and have been on a journey to impart knowledge and expertise in sustainable farming to our farmer partners. Over the years, these practices have not only helped improve soil quality, but also increased crop yield and, in turn, farmer incomes. We're continuously trying to ensure that the growth of this business doesn't adversely affect the environment. In fact, targeting net zero emissions amongst scope 1, 2, and 3 by 2039. In this journey towards net zero, we have recently announced our collaboration with key chemical companies to pilot the production of near zero emission soda ash, for instance, a key ingredient in our laundry powder. We've also asked some of our key supplier partners to pledge to work along us with emission reduction by joining our global supplier climate program. Through the program, we will provide tailored support aligned with industry standards to help upskill them and develop emission reduction plans to measure and share footprint data for product Unilever buys from these big industries. We have been taking steps to address the problem of plastics as well. As a packaged goods company, we realize the important role that plastic plays in our business. But at the same time, we realize that environmental change and damage that it can cause. Hence, we have announced our commitments to reduce the use of virgin plastic. use more recycled plastic, make packaging 100% reusable, recyclable, and compostable by 2025, and collect more plastic than we use in packing our products from almost a few years now. Yet another key aspect of our fighting climate change is securing the future of water. At HUL, we are determined to play a part through the HUL's foundation called Water for Public, a good program, Hindustan Unilever Foundation's program. We continue to build water conservation potential and enhance water-dependent livelihoods along with our partners. Since 2010, we have created a cumulative water conservation potential of 2.6 trillion liters. That's a lot of conservation, and I think it's impacted the communities very favorably as well. So like us at HUL, many other companies present here today are taking actions to ensure that we together realize India's vision to prosperity. In fact, as a nation, we have come a long way. But as many of you know, will agree that there is more to do and more to go. We are now standing at the inflection point. It's been a very exciting recent decade and many more exciting things to come in the near future, but that will require us to partner together to grow together. We need to ensure that our growth is sustainable and inclusive along being good and strong. At the end, let me quote Henry Ford, that coming together is the beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success. So maybe tonight will be the beginning of something successful along with all of us as partners in progress towards the bright future of our nation. Thank you very much for giving me your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Jawa, for that very insightful keynote. Are you okay to take a few questions from the audience?
Good evening, sir. I'm Pramod Shah, a former council member of the Institute of Company Secretaries and presently Vice President of Bombay Management Association. So there are two small comments I would request you to throw some light. So you have mentioned about demographic dividend. So vis-a-vis what will be the employment aspect, sir? Will there be enough employment for the new youth coming up to the fore? And number two, sir, question is, recently we have seen the trend that the manufacturing activities are going a little bit backward and service industry is taking the front seat rather. So your observation of that, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the question. I could understand the first one clearly. Second one, can you please help me?
The first one is about demographic dividend.
Yes, I got that.
Yeah, and sir, vis-a-vis employment aspect, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
So let me just start by commenting on that. I totally agree with you that demographic dividend is a dividend if you can create the right level of employability. And as I mentioned, we will have the youngest workforce in the world. And that is indeed an advantage, especially when you have aging societies in most of the developed world. But for that advantage to be realized into true asset and true potential, I think 2 or 3 things need to happen. One, of course, is upskilling. Because you can educate people, but unless the skills are vocational, relevant to the industry, and today, it can be done at scale. I mean, we have the examples of online education. We have the examples of many companies taking initiatives. So I think upskilling is absolutely critical. The second, of course, is that the growing economy needs to grow in a way in which can create more jobs. And more jobs can be only created by 2 factors. One is manufacturing, of course. And I think India is at a really historical moment because the world's looking for the +1, the next big manufacturing destination where there are trained workers available. And what we see around Apple or Tesla, and conversations on those suggest, and including in many other industries, that we will or have the potential to be the next manufacturing powerhouse of the world. I think along with manufacturing, we should also not underestimate the quality of our services industry, even though it doesn't employ as many people as manufacturing does. But India has a unique competitive advantage in the language of English, in the IT education, and what we already see with our IT industry going up the value chain. And especially after COVID shock, people know that all work can be done remotely. And I think that's a huge opportunity for the country as the GDP evolves, not just by hard goods, but actually by goods based on knowledge. So I think that's another place where you can find the opportunity. And at the end of the day, all of us in business, need to do our part. And that means doing all of the things I mentioned, employing people, including women, in factories and sales, upskilling people constantly to make them relevant for the and expanding. And our expanding market gives us the opportunity to do all of that at scale. And we got to make sure that our growth is not just high and strong, but also good for the communities that we serve. So I think we have a big role to play in our own way. And if all of us come together, then you know business can be a very powerful force multiplier of this country.
Yes, it was a wonderful message that you gave, and the potential of India and what Hindustan Liver has done. I come from an organization called ESAF, Small Finance Bank Foundation. I'm the director of programs there. So we work in almost a lot of tribal areas, like especially in Santal area in Jharkhand. So I want to know whether Hindustan Unilever also works among the tribal populations. Because from a research report, I came to know that there are almost 446 indigenous populations, tribal populations in India. So we work among one of the tribal population. There are 445 tribal populations in India who are the people of the land, the original residents of the land. And are you working among them to build them up, to raise their resources?
So first of all, thank you for doing what you're doing, because at the end of the day, it's the work of people like yourselves to make growth inclusive and do the hard things to really uplift the base of the society. So I appreciate and I'm grateful for what you do for the country. I think when it comes to HUL, what we want to do is to do things that can impact, where we have a direct impact. For instance, when we source something, like for instance, tomatoes, and we find that we can actually help the communities that are farming tomatoes to be more regenerative, that we can actually create a market for them, and at the same time we can get great product, improve yields, and improve the livelihood of the communities that do that. That for us is when we can bring doing well and doing good together. And our intention always is to try and find sustainability and purpose at the heart of our business so that it doesn't become an add-on. So that's been nature of the choices. So therefore, the Pravat program is around our big units. We have 29 big factories, and we cover communities that are around our factories. So we uplift the areas around us. So we do things that can have a direct impact. For instance, on plastic, we do waste-free collection models in big cities, or Suvidha, which is a hygiene program in Bombay. And these are models that have proven successful, and we'll not take them elsewhere. But we had a direct role, because we do sell hygiene products, and we could make a difference to that program, say, in the Dharavi slums. So where I'm going is that our larger principle is to do things that have a direct impact and have a sweet spot of business and sustainability. That said, HUF, which is Hindustan Unilever Foundation, does do work on water conservation, and that is agnostic. We go where there's a water scarcity, and we have, it's a 12-year-old program, and I'm so impressed by the mission, the zeal, and passion of those people, and how that team, HUF run by Shraman China company, who really does work in water budgeting, and it's a totally, it's not connected to the business, but it's purely done because we know that at a higher level, if there's water, then our products will have relevance. So we do work on water, and let's see, I don't know if that Jharkhand would fit their project program, but I'll find out, yeah. Thank you.
We can take one more question.
Can I ask, please?
Rohit will take. Rohit, thank you for a very insightful lecture. India hasn't created many global consumer brand. Where are we lacking, and what corrective measures we can take to eventually create global consumer brands out of India?
It's a great question, and when I was reflecting on how to position this, and I was thinking that the Indian model of growth will be a fairly distinctive model of growth, because the way the economy was growing is not conventionally the way other Asian economies have grown. Yes, there'll be bits and parts of that. Similarly, therefore, I was thinking that there's many things in which India has been pioneering. What earlier started off as the Jugaad economy became low-cost innovations, whether it's the Narayan Heart Hospital doing heart. So we've got the capacity to create real innovation in this country. Even the digital public infrastructure is absolutely pioneering, and it probably may be the model for other economies in the developing world. So India's reached a point of view where it's creating ideas, IPs, innovations for the rest of the world. As far as consumer brands are concerned, a lot of our brands, by the way, do go global. But they are serving the diaspora. Let me be absolutely honest about that. But for instance, some brands we have, which are based on proposition of Ayurveda, for instance. We have a brand that in Indolekha, which we acquired many years ago, it's grown 7 times in the last 7 years, is proven Ayurvedic expertise, therapeutically, clinically proven. And Ayurveda has traction in the rest of the world. So that could be, for instance, definitely one brand one day that could start to go in other parts of the world. So I think we have the capacity to create consumer brands. And some of the work that's happening around service brands in India right now as well. We were talking a little while ago on, what Titan was doing, or Carrot Lane, for instance. And the many innovations that might be inspired a little bit by the D-World models, but a lot of them will actually will evolve and become quite distinctive going forwards. But I do agree that the time has come for us to build and export global brands from India.
We can take one last question, I think, yeah.
Good evening. Thank you so much for sharing the different initiatives which HUL is taking. But if you can also tell a little bit about the Waste No More initiative which was taken and how is it doing?
I can't hear you very well. You said waste?
Waste No More initiative, the climate action initiative taken for the education of the kids by HUL. If you can share something on that side as well.
If I understand you well, you're talking about the waste-free work that we're doing in Bombay, or?
It's the, with Zinthio partnership, HUL and Zinthio had initiated the education for the school kids on the climate action and all. So on that part I'm asking. And the second part was on the plastic part which you mentioned. So on the recycling, what is, how is HUL supporting the recyclers who need the scale, how to manage and all? Because starting is easy, but managing is a big problem.
I think excellent question. It's a hard, first of all, let's start with the big picture. Plastic as a means of packaging is very hardy, it's durable. It allows people to consume things, they're protected. Small unit prices do serve the aspirations of billions of consumers in the country. So at one level, there's a lot of good things about it. At the other level, there is the ecological aspect of it. So as HUL, for some years now, we've been collecting more plastic than we actually put out in the environment. So we are in that sense plastic neutral. But the real deal is harder because we say is either less plastic, better plastic, or no plastic. But for us to actually get into a circular economy, which is the ultimate utopia, where you can actually just recycle the same thing over and over again, is hardest thing to do because it involves an ecosystem of consumers wanting to segregate, the waste collectors collecting, then eventually sorting, cleaning in waste-free facilities, or we call material recovery facilities, that going back into shredding and creating pellets that can be reused in the plastic industry, and then it being reused under the regulation that allows it to be reused. For instance, today you can't use post-consumer recycling product in food, and that then eventually going back to consumer. So this cycle is a hard one to do, and if you try to solve the whole country's problem, it's not going to happen. So in a small way, many years ago, we started in Mumbai with Vikasa, waste-free D ward, and we've got to a place where now it's economically and self-sufficient. So now we have a model in D ward, it's now going to another ward in Bombay, that can actually now work. It's economical. We've got consumer segregating, we run education programs for them, and all of the stuff I mentioned, in a microwave, we managed to prove it works in D ward in Mumbai. And it's self-sufficient, it's economically viable. And now our mission is we are taking it to another ward in Mumbai, also to Aurangabad. And if we can somehow make that model work, it can actually then be deployed and executed at scale as a playbook across other big cities. So that would be ultimately how we can actually lift up this entire area to make it more sustainable and viable for the long term. But it can be done, as we know, at a small scale.
Thank you, audience. Thank you, Mr. Jawa, for that very wonderful interaction. I request you to stay on stage as I invite Mr. Ritesh Tiwari to present a memento to you as a token of our appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Every year, the Chamber conducts the Economic Outlook Survey. Our sixth Economic Outlook Survey, covering large enterprises as well as MSMEs, has been completed, and we will be sharing the results with you soon. The survey has been conducted with the support and inputs from Dr. Sachchidanand Shukla, Bombay Chamber EPR&D Committee Chair and Group Chief Economist L&T Limited, and Mr. Indranil Pan, Bombay Chamber EPR&D Committee Co-Chair and Chief Economist, Yes Bank. We are privileged to have Dr. Shukla here with us today, and I now invite him on the dais to present the key highlights of our sixth Economic Outlook Survey. May I invite Dr. Shukla on stage, please? Thank you.
President Bombay Chamber, Mr. Tiwari, Chief Guest, Mr. Jawa, past presidents, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me immense pleasure to be sharing the highlights of the survey that we conduct every year. Before I go on to the findings, I just want to give you some context in terms of the global as well as the domestic macro backdrop. Please look at this chart, and this is going to be the fourth year in succession where the global economy is going to be heading down, right? Fourth year in succession. And if you look at the advanced economies, it's all being driven by the advanced economies. Each year, now for 3 years in a row, their numbers in terms of projections are halving each year, right? And that's very, very significant. What it means, and it ties down to what Mr. Jawa just said, the inevitable India story. Since this is Bombay Chamber, I'll use a Bombay phrase or a Mumbai phrase, apna time aa gaya, right? Essentially, if these guys are going to have each year in terms of growth rate, and the India story, and you can actually look at the emerging market pack, right, on the left, they're actually growing and supporting global growth. And this remains the backdrop for us. And also, if you look at what we've been thinking in terms of the global economy and the backdrop, basically geopolitical risk is back again. Nobody really thought that the Europeans are going to be fighting trench wars like First World War, right, with tanks and rockets and aircraft. But this is something that's happening. We all thought that this was the previous century and there is not going to be a problem, but here we are with so many of these wars being fought and the threat of some triggers. I mean, somehow they all start with the alphabet T, and as all of you know, economists love that alphabet soup, right? So T can stand for Taiwan, T can stand for Trump. So all those risks looming for 2024. The world, again, as you know, the backdrop is awash with debt, loads of debt for our future generations to repay. And the world is closing down for business. You can see the number of restrictions that are going up each single year. And if that one of the T's that I mentioned is back again at HEM in the US, probably this could rise again. China, as we all know, is a trigger which is taking the world down, and the Taiwan elections could probably cause some sort of problem next year again. I just want to spend a minute on this chart. Please have a look at this. These are 5-year ahead projections from the IMF, and you can actually see that this is just going one single way, which is down, right? And if I were to look at the next 5 years, and again, I'm talking about IMF projections, basically the India growth story, the contribution of India to global growth is going to be about 13.5%. And why is that significant is it is going to overtake the contribution of the United States of America, which is going to be just about 12-odd%. If I were to talk about Germany, 2%, UK, France, the erstwhile superpowers in terms of economic vitality and strength, they're all 1.5% each. Japan is 1.8. So essentially, the next 5 years, India is going to be contributing a lot more than the so-called industrial superpowers of the world of the yesteryears. And this, again, is why I'm saying that apna time aa gaya, an inevitable India story. And again, this is something that we've all heard at the beginning of the year in 2023. And now again, the R word is back. I mean, everybody's talking about a recession which might hit the US and certainly certain European economies, right? And we seem to be in a Goldilocks phase with growth, and you can use any metric, whether it is GDP, PMI, or whatever. But the point is, growth is higher, inflation is under control, and consumer as well as the business sentiment remains optimistic. Now, this brings us to the power of the denominator growth, right? Essentially, we've heard of the power of compounding story in market parlance, but we seldom take note of that in terms of the GDP growth rate, the denominator, right? Which is the incomes or consumption of all of us put together. If that story compounds at 11 odd percent, 11, 12%, 6 to 7% growth next 5 years, add 4 or 5% inflation. So if the denominator compounds at 11%, sectors and businesses are going to be growing multiples of that. And that is the power of the story. And this now ties in with what we found in our survey. And if you look at what our respondents are saying, basically saying that India's story remains robust, close to 7% growth, most of the people expecting that. Again, while there is zero sort of probability of recession, the global experts say, some of our respondents do feel somehow that there could be a recession, but the overwhelming majority, as you can see, nearly 80%, basically believing there is no problem with that. Overall capacity utilization, we know the RBI numbers, and you can actually see whether it is large enterprises or the smaller ones. It is in sync with what the RBI survey, which is again a broad average of all sort of enterprises. Another heartening feature, I think if you look at the left-hand side, essentially there is a good mix of greenfield, brownfield, and essentially more tilted towards greenfield, which has been rather absent so far, right? And the kind of respondents we have, or the fair mix of businesses that we have, this is indeed very heartening. In terms of impact of global slowdown, when we really ask these respondents, you can actually see not much really from the larger enterprises. MSMEs, obviously, you can see some bit of hesitance in terms of the impact. Another important feature that we found is internationalization of rupee, which has been the buzzword this year and will become very prominent next year. A lot of our respondents feel that this is going to be helping their business growth, right? Climate change, again, a lot of talk on sustainability and things like that. People do believe that this is going to have an impact on businesses and the top line as well as the bottom line. Coming to borrowing costs, again, people believe that, bulk of the respondents believe that borrowing costs could be going higher by another 50 basis. This again ties in with what the RBI just said. Essentially, of the 250 odd basis that they have done in terms of repo rates, just about 99 has been passed on. So this again ties in with what the central bank says. In terms of access to funding, again, you can see this is year after year. This has remained similar in terms of what our respondents feel. 61% of MSMEs believe that their borrowing costs, sorry, this is something that I mentioned already. Yeah. This is something that we found each survey, and the smaller players or the MSMEs, do encounter challenges from lenders in terms of cash credit, whereas the larger companies have some issues with the letters of credit, etc. Last year, the resounding story or the takeaway from our survey was the resilience of the MSME sector. This has continued, and you can actually see credit flow to the MSME sector is robust, roughly 17%, the latest numbers from RBI show. In terms of manpower, not too much of a problem when it comes to, say, wages or attrition, but some interesting findings you can see. The supervisory and the mid-management remains a challenge for the large as well as the small entities. Coming to the MSME responses now, essentially you can see the robustness that we have seen, roughly 10 to 20% top line growth. Most people believe that it's been a good year. Inventory levels, you can see not much change when it comes to bulk of the respondents. Another area where we have seen year after year, the dispute resolution and arbitration has been a problem. We've spoken about MSME Samadhan. Some improvement this year, but not as much as one would expect. We also asked people if the Section 43B has been of help, and you can actually see not really much over there from the MSMEs. This somehow is exact 50-50 in terms of liquidity and credit availability. When it comes to what are the biggest challenges for the future, talent acquisition, retention remain a big problem, the same as last year, followed by technological challenges and interest rates. In terms of what support do these MSMEs need, a large proportion of these people believe that they need assistance with new technologies, and importantly, information on government schemes, which somehow seems to be a problem. And we as a chamber can play an important part over there. So I will not really spill the beans in terms of some of the other interesting findings, and I'll probably stop over here. Thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shukla. I would like to take a few questions from the audience, one or two questions from the audience. Anybody?
Dr. Shukla, good evening. My name is Srinivasan. I co-chair the MSME committee. The MSME survey is also in alignment with what Mr. Jawa said in his address. That is, MSMEs are stressed, right? And one of the things that, while we would like to become a large economy, there's a potential. They are among the largest employers after agriculture, and that is where the derailment, if at all, can happen. And if you don't take care of it now, our dreams may not happen. So there are two big problems, as the survey has said. One, of course, is access to finance. The second is access to talent. So the employability that Mr. Jawa talked about is exactly the problem that MSMEs are facing. And you will also see a large part of the talent acquisition is in the middle, which is the supervisory cadre. Supervisory and managerial cadre, which is actually the first line management. So there is the owner, and then there is a worker, and then there is an in-between. If they don't get that, they never scale. Question is, what is it that we can do as a chamber or as an economist yourself and working in a large ecosystem, and anybody could answer that question. What is it that we could do to help MSMEs acquire that talent? Because if you go to engineering schools, they all want to work in large organizations. If you go to MBA schools, regardless of where they are in the tier, they want to work for large organizations. The compensation asymmetry is so high that an MSME does not get the talent. What is it that we can do as a chamber to address this problem?
So I think we can play the role of an intermediary, being in sync with some of the things that you really mentioned. I don't think it's a problem necessarily only for the MSMEs, right? This is something even the larger corporations are having to deal with. And I will again make that point, it's not a 2023 problem. If I look back 2008, 2005, 2015, despite having this demographic dividend, we've always been challenged in terms of finding the right sort of people, whether it's manufacturing, services, or whatever. And I think the point that I made in terms of the denominator, growing at this, I mean, so we are now no more a less than $1 trillion economy, right? 3.7 trillion, and growing at 11-12% nominal, which is what we should be looking for as entrepreneurs and business people, not just the real GDP numbers. And if that is the kind of growth rate, we will need to find avenues to deal with this problem. Like I said, it's not a problem of 2023 or 2024. We have had to deal with this. So, I mean, I can only think of some examples in the past. 2008, 9, or the heydays of growth, 2004 to 2008, the BFSI sector really grew fast, right? And then the IT sector. What they did was the corporates or the private sector had to go back to the academia and design courses, train people, and do things like that. I think this is something that more and more people will have to do. The government obviously doing its part in terms of skilling, matchmaking, and things like that. But I think we will have to find ways, because when you talk about MSMEs, and like you said, after the owner, there is a very, very thin line, and these are very, very niche segments, right? We'll have to find avenues, but as a chamber, the matchmaking and also providing information and stuff like that, probably that can really help. Yes, please.
I will take one more question, that's it.
So this is Chinmay. This is in continuation with the question what was just asked. So there is a large population of newly retired people or fresh senior citizen people in the age group of 58 to 62, and that population is available who started their career in 80s and so on. Is there any consideration of this population, because life expectancy has gone up, they have the, just available, but they are not being employed. So is there any kind of thought process on this talent?
So again, while everybody talks about the demographic dividend and how bulk of the people are young, but we fail to recognize that sooner than later, I mean, we'll have a sizable population, 17 to 18%, which will be in that 59 plus. And this is going to be a challenge for people who provide infrastructure or whatever services, consumer services. In fact, if you look at Kerala, it is now in that classic decline in terms of population. You can actually classify it along with some of these aging populations, right? So the definition is 16 to 17% thereabout, and that state is already into that decline or aging sort of population. We'll have to figure out ways in terms of providing avenues, like you said, I'm not talking about jobs, but a whole host of things, right? Senior living, consumer services, banking and financial services, and things like that. Because while we keep talking about this demographic dividend, a huge population is in sheer numbers. And please remember, when you talk about India, when we talk about percentage, we miss out on the aggregate numbers, which are huge, humongous, right? And therefore, we have to pay attention to that. So far, it's been confined on increasing the savings rate and somehow trying to do something on the savings schemes and things like that. But I think we need to pay attention to that. Not enough focus from the government or even the private sector towards that. We will have to pay attention over the coming years.
Thank you, Dr. Shukla, for that very interactive session. May I request you to stay on stage as I invite our Director General, Mr. Sandeep Khosla, to present a memento to you as a token of our appreciation. A huge round of applause for Dr. Shukla. As we come to the end of our proceedings tonight, I request Mr. Sandeep Khosla, our Director General, to present his vote of thanks.
Thank you, Stina. Dear Bombay Chamber family members, thank you for joining us today to celebrate our 188th Foundation Day. Helen Keller once said, "Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much." As we come to the end of the 188th Foundation Day, I take this opportunity to thank everyone whose contribution to the Chamber's legacy is invaluable. My sincere thanks to our chief guest, Mr. Rohit Jawa, President Unilever South Asia and CEO and Managing Director Hindustan Unilever Limited, for taking time out from his busy schedule to attend our Foundation Day and sharing insights on our journey from incredible India to inevitable India. Thank you, sir. I thank Dr. Shukla, Chairman of the EPR&D Committee, Bombay Chamber, and Chief Economist L&T for being here today and sharing the key highlights of the 6th Economic Outlook Survey. We will, as he has mentioned, we'll share it shortly with all the members. We will soon, I also thank Indranil Pal, who along with Dr. Shukla was instrumental in framing and taking out this survey. Mr. Ritesh Tiwari, our current president, has been tirelessly in his constant support and encouragement. I thank him for helping us to make this event a grand success. Thank you, Ritesh. We also feel very privileged today to have among us some of our past presidents, board members, and office bearers. Ms. Anjali Bansal, Mr. Nilesh Shah, Mr. Subedar, Mr. P.R. Ramesh, Mr. Mukundan, and Mr. Uday Khanna are here with us today. We thank them for the wonderful work they have done, and we are sure that their guidance and support will always be with us to ensure that as India's oldest chamber of industry, we continue to be at the forefront of advocacy and representation and knowledge sharing for industry, not just in Mumbai, but across the country. So thank you, sir, for your support always. I regularly call upon each of them for conducting so many of our events, and their guidance is very, very valuable. As a chamber, we have been able to achieve a lot and have organized multiple impactful events and activities over the past months. All this could not have been possible without the strong and consistent support of the Chamber Secretariat. A big thank you to the Bombay Chamber team for their commitment. Have a great evening. Thank you, and please join us for cocktail and dinner. Thank you, everyone, and good night.